Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe so you don't miss any future and upcoming battle reports. So this week was a 1 hour wargame scenario being played with black powder rules and the warlord games miniatures. So the battle itself was relieve the fort, and so the Confederates were besieging a fortress, and then the Union player had 2 units starting within the fortress, and then the rest are coming in as a relieving force through the woods. I'm not quite sure why it was designed with them to have significantly less than the Confederate besiegers, but that's what the rules were. We just doubled the numbers up because it did say originally 6 for the attacker and 4 for the defenders. Or no, sorry, 8 for the attacker and 4 for the besiegers. Anyway, the battle was a fun one, very hard for the Union player. I started off as the Confederates, so I chose to put my cavalry just at the back out of range, whilst my plan was to bombard the fortress because I had slightly more artillery and try and just pick off any individual units that came out and just hammer them with overwhelming artillery fire. Because I was besieging the fortress, there was no need for me to get reckless and start charging in, whilst the emphasis was on him to break the siege. Again, how he was supposed to do that with minimal troops and a smaller force than mine, I don't know, but hey, that's the rules. That's the rules of the game, as they were. So he started off by making a little pocket in the corner to try and fire upon me, whilst in the fortress he got his gun into a good angle so he could start firing down upon my forces. Again, for the first few turns, I did nothing, just sat there waiting. I targeted his artillery pieces with all of mine in the attempt to knock them out as quickly as possible, because they were really the only things that could hurt my army. He had the same idea to try and target mine, but because I had an extra gun, the odds were stacked in my favour. What I did decide to do was bring up the cavalry slowly but surely, and then I was planning on dismounting and sending them into the woods to start to whittle away some of his forces. Or if his troops did come out into the open further than they already were, I'd be in a position to mount up and charge him in the open. So it was going to be sort of a wait and see what happens there. He did start to deploy in line and start coming forwards, which I was quite surprised at due to his limited troops, but I knew he had to make a push. So the battle was afoot. Quite quickly, I think it was turn 2, my artillery pieces were able to overwhelm his first gun. So he started to lose the ability to inflict casualties on me without having to close the distance. So I took out his artillery piece in the fortress first, and then started moving a couple of my regiments up to try and get into position to assault the fortress. As my cavalry advanced, he did start to withdraw his troops back to the wood line, so that was going to reduce my ability to do a sweeping charge and win the battle fast, but never mind. He did make the move to get 2 of his regiments to the fortress as fast as possible to reinforce it, which was a good move from his part, because I was planning on swinging my guns around and just demolishing any troops in there, and seeing as he only had the 1 regiment left, they would have fallen quite quickly and I could have taken the fortress. But seeing his troops getting put into the fort, I swung 2 more regiments up on the right, and then my final 2 regiments I started to advance with the cavalry towards the units he had left in the woods. Due to the fortress, it's very hard with the rules that we're using to actually inflict casualties on the troops defending, so I was taking probably 3 casualties to every 1 dealt, which is probably quite realistic. It's just, yeah, it's very tricky to attack a fortress. So that's where my gun line started to come into its own, and I pulled my infantry back until I could really get into a good position to maximise my destructive capabilities. I just had my cavalry sat there, just out of his line of fire from his artillery piece. His troops in the fortress did inflict quite a number of casualties on my guys before I could pull them back, and that final artillery piece in the open was firing off every turn, doing some damage, but it was on this turn that I managed to actually finally silence that one, and then I had complete control of the battlefield. With his guns gone and no cavalry, he wasn't able to be in a position to actually manoeuvre anymore, so his forces were split. He had those in the fortress and those in the woods, with no real opportunity for them to link up anymore. So you could say the battle was effectively won at this stage, but he now did have 3 full regiments inside the town and fortress, so for me it was a matter of moving the troops up and trying to blow him out of there. There was the risk that he could have charged my flank, but I had the cavalry there, and so that gave me the security that I needed to think that he's not going to come out and try and attack the left flank of my forces as they got into their positions. Anyway, it was quite a quick game this week, because of the limitations put on to the Union player. It would be fun to try. I'd like to try it as the attacker and see if I could do anything different. But after the game was over, we both sort of stood there just talking over different scenarios to see if we could figure out any way around it. And to be honest, I don't really think it's doable, with the fact that the attacker, the Union player, had significantly less troops. If you've got any ideas of how it could be done, let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and keep fighting your own battles, and I'll see you next time.